All right. Well, what's happening, man? You got Marshawn Lynch here, man. Better known as the boy, the kid, Beastmode, man. It's a pleasure to meet the Dr. Fauci himself. You understand me? What's happening, big dog?
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Marshawn.
No problem. Did you understand anything I just said?
Yeah, I got it. I'm good at that.
All right, all good. It sounds like we on path.
Yep, we're on a path.
Yeah, what's going on, boss man?
Well, you know, we're trying to get as many people vaccinated against this COVID-19 because this has been a really horrible year for the entire country. We've had over 550,000 people died, disproportionately more African American and Hispanics than whites. They get more severe disease, they get more hospitalizations and more deaths. So what we want to do is to see if we can convince as many people as possible when the vaccine becomes available to them to get vaccinated. Right. And that's the reason why we thought maybe you and I having a conversation about that and chiming in, and since you're such an admired person by everybody, but particularly African Americans, because of your extraordinary career in football, that you might want to encourage them with me to make sure that people, although they may be understandably a little reluctant for a variety of reasons, to make sure they wind up getting vaccinated. So what do you think about that?
So what I do believe, big dog, is, I mean, that's unfortunate, and, to hear you put those numbers out there, it make my antennas perk up, but I would say more so, like, when it comes to, like, vaccinations or, government, I don't want to say experiments, but when it comes to, like, the government giving back to communities of people that look like me, we don't seem to be on the well-received end of those situations. So when you say it might be a little reluctant, for African Americans to go and get those vaccinations, I mean, I believe it's more of an education type situation, and not so much of the vaccination. But anytime we've been told that we was going to be in position to have something, gave to us or put in our community to help us, it seems to turn out, very bad for us. And then, I mean, it gets to the point where it's almost like it's a gamble, where if I go and take this vaccination, there's a chance that, you don't mind if I be myself, right?
No.
Okay, well then, it's a, it's a chance that I can, come out of this situation more fucked up than I went into it, rather than, by taking my chances and rolling the dice, by not getting it and going through, the illness, the sickness, and, coming out, whether because I have, at this point in time, I have more information of what can happen to me by if I catch this, rather than I haven't seen enough of our people who took the vaccination to see whether they come out better or worse. So I think it's more of the educational component.
All right, so let's go there. Let's go there. That's a good point. So first thing is that you have to understand that I do, and certainly many of my colleagues, totally respect the reluctance that African Americans have about things like this, because you're absolutely right. The history of how the federal government, going back decades, particularly in the area of medical issues, how they've treated African Americans has not been something that to be proud of. That's for sure. Got to recognize that. So the reluctance that you've expressed is a reluctance that founded in historical reality. So how do we get past that? And the reason why we got to get past that is because we don't want African Americans in the community to not have the advantage of the protection of something that really works because of history, even though the history was correct. So you got to ask questions. Putting aside that we respect your reluctance, what are some of the reasons why you're reluctant? You could say, well, the vaccine was developed too quickly. Most vaccines take years to develop.
You have that.
You guys did it in less than a year. What is that kind of stuff? Are you putting something over on us? Is this something that's being reckless? Are you taking chances with us? Well, the answer to that is that the speed is really the reflection of an incredible amount of research that took place for decades before the vaccine was actually developed. So even though it was developed in less than a year to put into people, it took decades of work to make it get to that point. So that's the first and important question. You got to understand that it wasn't reckless, and it's safe because we tested it in tens of thousands of people, including African Americans and Hispanics. One vaccine was tested in 30,000 people, another one in 44,000 people, and another one in 40,000 people. So that safety of it has been proven by tens of thousands of people in trial. And the confidence that I have in it and others is that I got vaccinated myself.
So what were the numbers from those vaccinated, as far as, with it being tested on African Americans and being tested on, Hispanics and or whites or any other race, the numbers from those vaccinations of the, I don't want to call them test subjects, but, the people that they tested on to see that, what were the results or the effects of, it being for the blacks and the Hispanics? Because those, when you say those type of things, it's like, yeah, you say that they were tested, but we don't know the results to those tests. We don't know the outcomes to that. And is it just the fact that there's something in which, and black and browns that, our body produced that doesn't take to, either the vaccination and or the virus itself, that, it put us at a disadvantage? Because when you start talking about all these things and, you just get your mind going, it just puts your mind in a different place to, with it being, a pandemic with the coronavirus going on. But, you start to think about all of the diseases that really do affect black and browns and how we don't have, cures for those or vaccinations for those, but there's treatments which at the end of the day, we're not able to sustain to be able to pay for those. And then it becomes a money play, and then it becomes, this whole situation of, shit, do they really give a fuck about us? Do they really care about us? What's the real situation? So I feel as a black man, we had a little conversation earlier, like I wanna last long. I don't wanna come in last. And the effects of that, well, not the effects, but the mindset of going to do that, does that speed up, my life expectancy to come to an end quicker, or?
Well, let's answer that because they're all really, really good questions. So what do we know? When we tested the vaccine in African American and Hispanics, it was safe and it induced the kind of response that was literally identical to the response in whites. It was the same as whites. It was as safe as it was in whites, and it was effective as it was in whites. So and that information is public knowledge because the results of that trial are being published in the literature, and the results were submitted to the Food and Drug Administration, which is the regulatory body that decides whether it's safe and effective to give a product to people in this country. And the Food and Drug Administration, in an open and transparent examination of the data, decided that it was safe and effective in young people, old people, black people, white people, brown people. And that data isn't a secret. That is now public knowledge. So we know that. Though what else do we know? And this is the answer to your other question. We know that when African Americans get infected with this coronavirus, that they have a much greater chance of getting seriously ill and dying than whites do.
And what's the medical or the research that y'all have acquired? What is it about our bodies that is producing that is going to take a strenuous toll on us than maybe say the white person?
All right, great question. Great question, Marshawn. What it is that in the African American population, likely because of decades and decades, if not centuries, of
Being
social
tested on.
determinants of health, you have, as a group, as a community of brown and black people, you have a higher incidence of those underlying conditions that make it much more likely that when you get infected, you're going to get a serious outcome. So what are some of those conditions? Diabetes is more common in blacks than whites. Hypertension is more common. Kidney disease is more common. Chronic lung disease is more common. Obesity is more common. All of those things make it much more likely that if a black person gets infected, they'll have a worse outcome than if a white person gets infected. And that's the reason why we feel it's so important to get African Americans vaccinated so that when they do get infected, they won't go on to develop those serious consequences, or even better, they'll be protected from getting infected in the first place.
So what it sounds to me is we have a bigger problem than just the coronavirus. From all those medical conditions that you just explained to me, those were, if I was to go and give, because I'm not the type of individual who go and pushes my agenda on anybody, regardless of their color. But it sounds to me as those health conditions in which you just put out there is the bigger problem for, individuals within my community. But then that only goes back to why they're actually in that community anyway. When you talk about obesity, diabetes, because of the type of shit that's in our communities. Those are the things in which we have access to. So there's no way for us to, counteract those medical conditions when that's what at our fingertips, that's what's at our, our disposal. So when we get put into those positions, it's like, shit, we already back at the dice game, and I'm trying to roll a 7-11 on the first roll because I want to win. So there go a bigger gamble. And I mean, like I said, when we start to have these conversations, it get the wheels turning in my head. And it's more so just like, I understand, the coronavirus is knocking my people down. I understand that, being vaccinated helps, the world get back to what we knew it before. But then we still haven't tackled the problems in which makes us more susceptible to dying off if we do get that. So it just, it becomes to be to me, just a mind fuck game. And then it just go back to, like you said, decades of being, experiment on, things being put in our community, which they say is order to, wipe us out or, keep us confined within those communities. So, I mean, just growing up, in Oakland alone, grew up in project housing authorities. And I mean, just within this last pandemic of, the year, I've had situations where I've had family members who have, got the disease, who have got the virus, and, they've came back from the virus, and they like, oh, because of what's been out there, the education that we have been getting, if I got corona once, I can't get it again. So they feel like they Superman at that time. And then there's a situation where I've had individuals who have got it and they have passed away at a more rapid time than, some of the other diseases that in our community that's killing people. But then I have this thought of like, okay, we have you know, the coronavirus going on. We have, you know, a lot of those medical conditions that we have going on. But we just trying to not attack, but we trying to repair one of those situations, which I mean is like, you know, putting a Band-Aid, you know, on a gunshot wound. That shit just not gonna work. And I mean, like I said, I want to see my people last long, not come in last. And it just seemed like in any type of situation in which we think about it, we always at the ass end of everything. And now that there's a vaccination for the coronavirus, it's like we're trying to push the African American and the Hispanics and the Browns to the front of the line. Like, hey, go and get this vaccination. It's free. You know, we're gonna make sure that we're gonna put them in areas to where, you know, accessible to you, so you could get there to be able to make sure that you know you are able to get it. And it's more so just like, why haven't this been the situation and the fight for us since the beginning of time?
Right.
But
right.
then that just get into a whole nother fight.
No,
Which I
that's
mean,
a good
you know,
point.
I don't want to put that on you, and then that
You got it. It's a
somebody-
great point. It's an absolute great point. So let's unpack that and talk about it, because it's really a good point. The fact is that when we get over this outbreak, I hope we don't forget all the things you're talking about, because it's the conditions that African Americans have been put into from the time they were born, with the lack of adequate access to good diet. That's what leads to obesity. With lack of health care accessibility, that leads to hypertension that goes undiagnosed. When if you have a good doctor who sees you, he could find out you're hypertensive, can give you a medication, control your blood pressure really, really well. So what we've got to remember, that let's get through this coronavirus pandemic now. Let's get African Americans and Hispanics vaccinated. But when it's over, let's try and make a commitment that would likely last for decades and decades, to try and turn around those conditions that got African Americans behind the eight ball in the first place. That's what we got to do. That's what we got to do.
So I mean, I feel that, you know, with the vaccination being, you know, distributed, you know, through the U.S., that, you know, at a point in time, it's, you know, it's I mean, just me speaking out, I believe that it's gonna become, you know, how can you say that? Not mandatory to have a vaccination in order to live in the world in which we used to see it as. And if you choose not to get that vaccination, then you'll be confined to maybe your residence, or, you know, whatever precaution that they take for individuals who don't go and get vaccinated. So I mean, I don't know what that looked like, and I guess that would be a question that I'm asking you as far as, you know, the world, you know, opening back up with individuals, you know, who do have vaccination versus individuals who don't have vaccinations. What access will they be limited to? Will not be able to have? If I don't have a vaccination, am I not allowed into ShopRite? Am I not allowed into?
Some countries are already doing that. Some countries are already doing what's called vaccine passports, that you get, like, you know, almost like a driver's license, that you can't get on a plane, you can't go into a restaurant. We haven't gotten to that point yet in this country. But I think that as we get more and more people vaccinated, it's going to be very, very clear that if you want to have the kind of freedom to do some of the things you want to do, like I said, we haven't gotten to that point yet in this country, but a lot of countries are getting to that point where, in order to feel safe for yourself and for other people, you got to show that you're vaccinated. The same way, you know, you grew up in Oakland.
Right.
I'll bet you when you were going to elementary school, you had to get vaccinated with measles, with mumps, rubella. They wouldn't have let you in the class.
unless
I know that's what happened when I went to elementary school. I had to show that I was vaccinated with all of these vaccines for kids.
right. But I mean, there was like I'm not trying to play devil's, but there was a way, around that where there was Muslim schools that didn't require that.
Right.
But then at the
There
same
are some
time,
exceptions.
are those schools accommodated in the accommodations when you want to go and apply to colleges? Are those schools accepted, whether because I haven't been, vaccinated, or because they just don't feel that the education is up to par when it comes to, getting into a university or, a Ivy League school, whether I have the grades and the knowledge to do that, but because, I took this route of not wanting to go and get this vaccination. And then at the end of the day, I'm not saying it in terms of, I'm opposed or, I'm telling my people not to go and get it. But I mean, I do want to know that, like I said, I want to get educated more to the fact of, if this is something that, they do not feel that they want to go and do, because they would rather take their chances at the crap tables and say, well, I rather gamble on the side of, I don't want to take the vaccination.
Yeah.
Do they what, not have the opportunity to live a normal life anymore?
Well, let's look at it from another standpoint. So there's also the thing called social responsibility. So you're a young, healthy guy. The chances of you getting seriously ill are less than if you were elderly or if you had an underlying condition.
Right.
But one of the ways that you can contribute to society by protecting yourself from getting infected, that you could, if you don't have any symptoms, if you were infected, you could inadvertently and innocently spread it to someone else, who might then inadvertently spread it to somebody's mother or grandmother who's on chemotherapy for cancer, or somebody's brother who's immunosuppressed because they got a transplant, or somebody who's on a medication to suppress their immune system. So even though you doesn't make any difference because you're not going to likely get sick anyway, by getting vaccinated, you're preventing the virus from spreading in the community. So you have a responsibility not only for yourself, but you have a responsibility for the community to prevent that virus from spreading. And the easiest way to do that is to everybody get vaccinated, because then the virus won't have any place to go.
Yeah, you make a good point when you look at it that way. And I'm glad you shifted and told us that we're gonna look at it from a different perspective. But at the end of the day, like I said, I'm more on the side of, like I said, I'm not here to push any agenda on any individual, whether you black, white, Mexican, Asian, Indian, or whatever. My thing is more so, I would just like for it to be, the information to be accessible to all of these individuals, for they can go ahead and educate themselves. So which then at the end of the day, it puts them in a position, because like you said, a social responsibility in order to, live that life. But I really believe that it's gonna come to a point whereas if you don't have this vaccination, you won't be able to live life the way that you were able to before, which ultimately is going to put you in it's not mandatory, but it's mandatory. I played in the NFL for damn near 15 years. And we used to have these meetings that was quote unquote not mandatory, but if you didn't come, they were gonna hit you where it hurt, and that was in them pockets. So, it's kind of that same thought process with what's going on, which at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer, which I'm glad that, I was able to get this opportunity to talk with you, because just listening to you, it gives me more insight, and it, helps me, formulate more questions, which I'm gonna have. And when I go back into my community, because I'm 10 toes down in the town, and I actually, have conversations with, whether it's a crackhead, a wino, a doughboy, the mayor, the athletes, the coaches at the little league team, the high school teachers. Like, I'm really planted in my soil. So when I had these conversations, and these are the type of things in which, gets them, going or frustrated. And what it really comes down to and boils down to, like I said before, is the biggest thing is which is the education. And I mean, if you're not if you're not a individual who speaks the language, you can get lost in the sauce. And a lot of the information that is out there for you, what they say, oh, it's out there, you just gotta look. That shit goes over majority of the people from my community. It goes right over their heads. Or they formulate an opinion based off of, something that is said, by the government, and they don't interpret it right. And then they make up this whole blase about a situation which is really not. So I mean, the information that is put out there, if it's not put out there for every individual to understand it, when you're looking from an A to Z standpoint, then you have those people with doubts on why I'm not going to go and get the vaccination, or why I'm saying no, fuck the government, because the last time I know that they put something in our community, it killed my brother, or it killed my son, or it killed my grandmother. So now I have a personal vendetta against the information that they are putting out there, only because I'm not able to break down the information that you're giving to me as if, which is why you got me in the first place, because I could speak to them. But then at the end of the day, it's a good thing, because now I can get educated on it. And when I go back to my foundation and I talk to my kids in there, I can go and tell them in a different manner, in which if they watch, a segment on the news, like, I know they talking about the coronavirus, but I just don't understand what they saying because of maybe the verbiage, the terminology, the way they speaking, or who's giving the speech, or the information, and that's putting it out there. So I mean, if it come down to it, and that's what the government wants, then the government has to come and meet the black and the brown community at a level of where they are, and rather than just saying, oh, it's information, go get the vaccination because it's free, but you're not telling me what I want to know about the vaccination. And then if you choose to, it's in a terminology of which I don't even understand what the fuck you just said. So I don't believe your ass even more now, because you had the opportunity to come straight up with me and you chose to take the lower road, because me and you are not on the same.
But Marshawn, that's why you and I are talking.
Hey man, you know what? Hey, you that Dr. Fauci was heading. So look, man, whenever you ready to come to Oakland, just let me know, man. I'm gonna tell you, Bill Clinton came to Oakland, and we had Bill Clinton in the hood. I'm talking about, we had him in deep East Oakland, and he came out there, and he came to our level, and he was able to have a conversation. And I believe that it did something for my community. I believe it did something for the people who attended it. And I believe that if they would have, took a little bit more time and, getting this individual acquainted before he got there with, I guess you would say marketing or whatever, I think it would have had a bigger impact. But now, you're taking the time out, to have this kind of conversation with me. And then if it is something that the government is really wanting, to happen, then have those individuals that look like yourself come out and speak to these communities and these black and brown individuals on a level of which they can understand. Now, I mean, it might not be you, but it's somebody back there with one of them credentials on that wall that I'm saying, it's about 30 of them motherfuckers, but you get somebody with one of them 30 credentials on that wall to come out and give the information to individuals who look like and feel like me, then we have a different situation. And then we might be not so I remember what y'all did to me last time, you're not about to get me again type situation.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Well, it's great talking to you, Marshawn, really. I hope we can get some good for your community.
Yeah, I hope so too. And then I hope, when this situation dies down, gets better, I hope that, you know, the same individuals who put this situation together between me and you will reach back out to me so we can tackle some of those other issues in which you brought up to me before. Because, I mean, you know, like I said, it's all educational for me. And the more educated that I am on these situations, the better that I can inform my individuals and my Africans and my Migos and my brown people on what it is that we need to do to be able to be in a position to where we spread this throughout all of our communities to have them uplifted and rise and go to another level so we could become one with these elements out here so we can last and not come in last.
Right. Absolutely. All right.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it, big dog. Thank you.
Same here.
It's been a pleasure.
Same here. All right.
Yes, sir, man. Hey, thank you, big dog.
Thank you. It's really been a great pleasure.
Yes.
If I come out to Oakland, I hope maybe you and I will go one-on-one on the basketball court.
Oh, I wouldn't even want to press my luck. But if we throw a football in there, if we throw a football, because you look like you a little quick dude, like you gonna get out there and hit me with an Allen Iverson crossover or something, man.
You bet.
Right on, man. I appreciate it. It's been a wonderful
Same
pleasure speaking with you. Your team has been amazing, and I just want to say, you know, thank you. And I hope, you know, this get across to, you know, the individuals that need the information, that need the education, and, you know, hopefully it makes an impact with, you know, what's going on, big dog.
Yep.
Big dog.
Very good. Take
Bella
care.
figa.
Bella figura.
Bella figa.